This is breaking news.
Donald Trump's latest lawsuit could cost him dearly. Donald Trump has filed yet another lawsuit, but he's clearly able to accept the financial consequences if it doesn't work out, a legal expert told Newsweek. On Monday, the former president said he's suing veteran Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward, publisher Simon & Schuster, and its parent company, Paramount Global, for $49 million over the journalist's use of interviews for his audiobook, The Trump Tapes. In the suit, Trump alleges that he told Woodward numerous times that the interviews he gave to the reporter in 2019 and 2020 must only be used for the reporter's book, Rage. The former president accuses Woodward of attempting to capitalize on his voice by using the recorded interviews in the separate The Trump Tapes audiobook, which was released in October 2022. Barbara McQuaid, a University of Michigan law professor and former U.S. attorney, said Trump's $49 million lawsuit is legally weak, and that if the former president consented to the use of the interviews in a book, then he can't object to them later being published in audio form, unless there was an explicit agreement against that. However, McQuaid suggested that the true intention of the suit may not to be actually punish Woodward or his publisher. The lawsuit may instead be intended to provide political talking points, portraying himself as the victim of the media, McQuaid told Newsweek. Aggressive use of lawsuits can also be a way of deterring others from publishing unflattering news. McQuaid added that Trump may accept any possible sanctions he will receive over the dubious suit as the cost of doing business. Trump is known to file lawsuits for a host of legal reasons, including merely to delay and frustrate proceedings against him, his campaign team, or his businesses. Earlier this month, Trump and his lawyer, Alina Habba, were reprimanded by a judge for filing a series of frivolous 2016 election lawsuits against the perceived enemies of the former president. On January 19, U.S. District Court Judge Donald Middlebrooks sanctioned Trump and Habba for their continuing pattern of misuse of the courts by launching legally questionable suits naming the Democratic National Committee, Hillary Clinton, and former FBI Director James Comey as defendants. Trump alleged that Clinton and other Democrat figures had conspired with each other to accuse his campaign team of colluding with Russia in the 2016 election in order to hinder his chances of victory. In his ruling, Middlebrooks fined Trump and Habba and ordered them both jointly to pay nearly $938,000 in legal costs for the 31 defendants named in their suits. Middlebrooks also criticized Trump for being a mastermind of strategic abuse of the judicial process, with his use of lawsuits as political weapons. In a joint statement, Woodward and Simon & Schuster said Trump's lawsuit is without merit, and they will aggressively defend themselves against it. All these interviews were on the record and recorded with President Trump's knowledge and agreement, the statement said. Moreover, it is in the public interest to have this historical record in Trump's own words. We are confident that the facts and the law are in our favor. Trump has been contacted for comment. Trump revamps his fundraising operation after struggling to raise money for 2024. Former President Donald Trump is strapped for campaign cash following the mid-November launch of his 2024 presidential campaign, according to end-of-year figures obtained exclusively by NBC News. Trump, who has been the GOP's most prolific fundraiser in recent years, pulled in about $9.5 million over the final 6 weeks of last year through his campaign and a joint fundraising committee, according to a person familiar with his haul. The numbers were shared with NBC News in advance of Trump's filing of the first campaign finance totals of his third bid for the presidency Tuesday. Trump's decision to launch in the shadow of a tough midterm election for the GOP, donor fatigue, and his soon-to-end absence from the social media giant Facebook all contributed to the cash crunch, Republican operatives said. In a sign that Trump understands he'll need to raise more money faster for what promises to be a competitive GOP primary campaign, his campaign recently expanded its digital fundraising team by hiring the firm Campaign Inbox to solicit the small-dollar donor set. Campaign officials have long said he would use the early part of this year to build up his apparatus and begin expanding his footprint in early primary states. There are other reasons to think that Trump can bolster his cash machine. He has yet to launch a traditional mail fundraising apparatus, which is a time-tested means of gathering small contributions in large numbers. And his early fundraising has been limited by his ban from Facebook, a top fundraising platform for him in 2016 and 2020, which kicked him off for inciting the mob that sacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021. but the company has said the ban will be lifted. Trump also hurt himself by announcing his campaign right after the midterm elections, a fundraising doldrums for candidates across the partisan and ideological spectrum. Eric Wilson, a Republican digital fundraising consultant who isn't affiliated with the campaign, said that in addition to announcing at a bad time for fundraising generally, Trump started asking for money amid a round of finger-pointing over the GOP's disappointing midterms, in which some fingers were pointed at the omnipresent former president. If you want a big fundraising pop when you announce your campaign, you don't do it right after an election where all your donors are burned out from being bombarded by fundraising asks and you don't have a great track record to show for it, Wilson said. That was the reality for Trump, whose affiliated entities actually raised more before his presidential campaign launch than after his big announcement, $11.8 million from October 1 until his November 15 launch, and then only $9.5 million from November 15 through the end of the year. The vast majority of post-launch donations to Trump, which largely flowed through the Joint Fundraising Committee, came from low-dollar donors, according to the person familiar with the numbers. The 291,617 donors who gave $200 or less accounted for 99.48% of his contributions. On average, their donations totaled $32.32. It's also possible that Trump could hire additional vendors for the digital fundraising program, which relies on emails and text messages to solicit donations. Everybody wants that account, because he's the king of small-dollar donors, said a Republican who works in the digital fundraising space and asked to remain anonymous to speak candidly about the former president. Beyond the digital enterprise, Trump is expected to build a more traditional fundraising structure to bring in donations of $2,900 apiece for the primary campaign, the maximum allowed under the law. Campaigns often tap heavy hitters to bundle those donations together at high-level fundraising events. But it's the low-dollar donors who have carried Trump in the past, sending small chunks of cash to keep his campaigns running. Most important, Wilson said, may be his impending return to Facebook. Almost 50% of Republican donors log into Facebook every single day, Wilson said, citing data from a survey connected to a nonprofit group he runs. So if you are not able to reach those donors, you're just at a huge fundraising disadvantage. The cash-strapped Trump hasn't held one of his signature campaign rallies since he announced his bid. He kicked off his travel schedule Saturday with stump speeches in the early primary states off New Hampshire and South Carolina, spending small chunks of cash to keep his campaigns running. Most important, Wilson said, may be his impending return to Facebook. Almost 50% of Republican donors log into Facebook every single day, Wilson said, citing data from a survey connected to a nonprofit group he runs. So if you are not able to reach those donors,